Generalova speaking. I'm the knowledge manager for the Child Hub and I'm talking to you from Budapest. Could you please let me know in the chat box on the right if you can hear me well? Okay, I can see people hear me. That's good. That's a good sign. So I would like to talk through some very basic features of the platform for those of you who never used this type of Adobe Connect platform before. And then I will give the floor to our speaker. So please use for any messages or questions or technical inquiries the chat box in the right bottom corner where you're typing right now. Your microphones will be muted, so communication unfortunately is only possible in writing. Please pay attention to the polls. You might have already seen some when you entered the room, and we will have some more in the future. Make sure your speaker icon is green. It's located on the top black bar. To be able to hear as well, it needs to be green. And also next to it on the right, you can see an icon of a man with a raised hand. You can use it to show your emotions or suggestions. And now I will put the slides of our presenter. Just give me a minute. And if you haven't answered to the polls yet, could you please do it now, and then Natalie can comment. And today our presenter is going to be Natalie Macaulay. She's going to talk about emotional health of social workers, and she's a senior advisor and consultant with Humanitarian Wellbeing, and she has nearly 20 years of experience in the humanitarian field. And even more amazing, she's going to talk with us today directly from Australia. So Natalie, the floor is yours now.
Hello everyone, good evening my time, and good afternoon to many of you. Thank you to those that filled in the survey prior to the webinar today. I had a number of answers to the survey, and thank you to those that are filling in the polls right now. It's good to see that some of you are already building self-care into your daily life. And it's also not unusual for us to see that a significant amount of you are seeing some signs of stress. We will talk further about that as we go through the webinar.
I need to hide the polls now.
Yes, is that possible? I was just trying to do that. Thank you. Okay, so welcome everyone. As I was just introduced, I work for Humanitarian Wellbeing. It's one of my jobs. I'm an international consultant at the moment, independent consultant, but I've worked for many organisations, including UN and INGOs. My background is actually in social work originally, and I've since been qualified as a psychologist, but also as a life coach. And Humanitarian Wellbeing at the moment take on clients like yourselves that are in the field working in humanitarian emergencies around the world, and we do one-on-one sessions plus group sessions. But I will talk about that a little bit more later. The idea is to build self-care into your everyday, and if you do that, then you minimize the impact and the long-term impact on your work as well, and you get better results in your work. So today we're going to, by the end of this webinar, we should be able to review the recent research that we have done on psychosocial wellbeing, understand why self-care is important, identify gaps in your own self-care planning and those of your team members, identify indicators in colleagues who may need assistance, and develop self-care plans, so have an idea of how to do that and what resources you can use. So I want to put a question to all of you first, and if you can use the chat box, that would be great. Why do you think self-care would be important in our type of work? To prevent burnout, yes. To be more effective in our work, absolutely. There's a lot of evidence that building in self-care in our everyday lives produces much better results in work. To be able to provide better care to our beneficiaries, yes. Impacts upon your ability to perform, yes. Manage emotions, yes. We see a lot of people that are unable to respond in an appropriate manner at work when they're highly stressed. We can't help others if we're not doing well ourselves, absolutely. Yes, and what is, yeah, vicarious trauma, which is what we deal with every day. Prevent harm for us and our clients, absolutely. So we do lose a lot of really wonderful people in this field to various forms of vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, but also various forms of emotional disturbances. And when people are burnt out, they're unable to keep going. Also, they may react in a way that jeopardizes their career and may mean that they can't perform and get the results that they usually would. These people, usually you will see them being very productive initially, and then all of a sudden, over say a 6 months to 1 year, they will start to change. And it's important for all of us to look after each other and identify that in others. But certainly, as was the predominant answer, it really does mean that we do get better results for our beneficiaries. But we're also important in this. And I know that many of us have gone into this because we care about other people and we really want to help them. But we also need to care about ourselves. So many of you have done brain development in your original degrees. And I just want to bring you back to that. Can anyone tell me what is the first part of the brain that's developed? Can anyone remember? There's a few of you typing. Okay, someone studied economics. Yes, the reptile part of the brain, that's true. So it's actually the brain stem. So it's this bottom part of the brain, as you can see in the picture on our screen now, the pink component. It's the brain stem, and it actually is developed at a very early stage. When do you think it's developed? If you think logically about the brain, it develops from the base up to the top. So when do you think the bottom part of the brain would be developed? Anyone brave enough to have a go? I guess. So yeah, during pregnancy. So yes, in the fetus. So it is when you're in utero to 9 months. And the primary function of this part of the brain is to regulate physiological states. That includes any sort of stress arousal, sleep, fear. It ensures survival, so it regulates your heart rate, your blood pressure, your body temperature, your oxygen, sugar levels. Basically, it's your survival part of your brain. It's critical to healthy development of the rest of the brain, and ultimately, whether you're a functioning person or not. So this part of the brain is the least plastic in that it doesn't change. It's much, much harder to change than the other parts of the brain. Now, why would I talk about this, the brain development, do you think? Yes, exactly, because it's where your core reactions are stored. So when you're under an amount of stress, your brain obviously takes over because it's what manages everything that we do. But what it will do is it'll put us back down into the base of our brain, which is the reptilian part of our brain, which one of you had said. And it will put us back to those sort of basic functionings, which is basically where we get fight, flight, freeze. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But the next part of the brain is the diencephalon. Then you've got the limbic system, which is this light blue component. And then the neocortex is the grey matter at the top. Majority of brain development, when do you think the majority of our brain is developed? Through what ages? 1 to 3 years? Pregnancy to 3 years? 15 to 20? Well, actually, you're all pretty much right. So the 90% of our brain is developed up until the age of 4. And that is a significant amount, isn't it, when you think about it? 90% of our brain is developed, and trauma and emergencies impact that brain development. Now, the next time our brain has a big, sort of that last 10% is pushed along, is in our adolescence. So that's when we take more risks, when we start pushing boundaries and the like. So you probably see a lot of programs in the field targeted at those age groups, and that's one of the reasons why. But for us as adults and looking after ourselves and our team members, some of the way we have been raised and things that have happened as we've been growing up has impacted the way our brain actually reacts to difficult situations. So we all react very differently based on that early learning. So just to be clear, we've got the brain stem in utero to 9 months, diencephalon 6 months to 2 years, limbic system 1 to 4 years, complex emotions, social language, attachment, and then you've got the neocortex, which is the grey matter, 3 to 6 years. And as I said, up to sort of end of adolescence is when the bulk of your brain is developed. So what it does is it regulates your typical responses to threats. Our brains help us respond to threats. In a dangerous or potentially dangerous situation, our brain goes on alert and prepares the body ready to respond. So this is the fight, flight, or freeze response. So I want you to think about what type of reactions happen after a difficult situation or event for you. So what type of physical reactions do you have? What type of changes in thinking do you have or do you see in others? What sort of emotional changes, behavioral changes? What do you see in yourself? Yes, increased heart rate is a big one. Most of us get that. Sweating, yes. Irritability, yes. Fear, yes. Anger, definitely. Headaches, absolutely. Disorientation. Flushing of the face, yes. Some of us go a nice beetroot colour. Shivering, anxiety, yeah. Churning of the stomach, crying. Stress just generally, yep. Sweating, no desire of anything. So, yeah, not really wanting to do anything. A level of sadness. Yeah, I mean, all of these answers are absolutely right. So there's a whole gamut of reactions that we all have to difficult situations and or events. And I think what we need to recognize is that these are all very normal. And if you think of that list that we're talking about, okay, so another one is shivering, which is, yeah, very true. So your body is reacting down in that reptilian part of your brain. So it's gone straight down to the base of your brain and it's reacting accordingly. And any of these sort of reactions are very normal reactions to abnormal situations. Is this making sense so far? Great. So just to give you some examples, you might get a strong heartbeat, tense muscles, not breathing normally, pain without any cause. That includes headaches, which one of you had said, dizziness, muscle cramps, tiredness, lack of energy. only thinking about the problem. Now, that could be from our perspective, only thinking about work, for example, and not having anything outside of work, or only thinking about a project or a difficult situation at work. Getting confused or changing our mind easily, so not being able to focus. Flashbacks, so going back to that difficult situation all the time. And difficulty in trusting others, so maybe being a little bit paranoid as well. Feeling angry, sad, or hopeless, not feeling anything, erratic mood changes, or lack of empathy for others. Difficulties in sleeping, yes, that's absolutely true, Sandri. Eating problems as well, not just the sleeping problems. So eating too much, not eating enough, overly withdrawn or aggressive. So it could be either or. You could be a person that sits in a meeting and just doesn't react at all, even when things probably need a reaction. Or you could be the opposite, where you're overreacting, including writing aggressive emails and the like. Nervous, high levels of fear and anxiety, increased dependency and support from others, regression, so going backwards, engaging in dangerous activities, strange behaviors, being too good, yes, hostile, yes, being hostile is definitely a sign. What I want to emphasize here is that these are all very normal responses to abnormal situations. This is not an irregular thing. And in our psychosocial programming in the field, we know from how we deal with our clients and how we deal with our beneficiaries that people will regain normal functioning through these sort of self-help efforts and mutual help initiatives. What we're not doing in the humanitarian field is creating that for ourselves. So we're focused very much on the beneficiaries, and we're forgetting about ourselves in amongst this process. The psychosocial well-being of us as adults, particularly if we're parents and caregivers, has a direct impact on our children's responses as well. So if you have your family with you and the like, this can impact them as well. So one of the ways that you need to start thinking about this, and we will talk about it later, is to make sure that you're all connected with your family members, your friends, and even support groups in amongst your colleagues that are in the field if you're not actually living at home. Make sure you have social connections and interactions. Normalize your daily life. So making sure that you have activities before and after work that would bring you back to some level of normality. Promote a sense of competence and control over your life. Encourage your resilience. So we do this through a whole lot of resources and activities that I can talk about later. I want to just go over our recent survey results, which we released at the end of last year. And we actually interviewed a whole lot of humanitarians that are in most of the level 3 emergencies at the moment. We circulated it really widely. We had 167 respondents. They worked for UN agencies, UN missions, and INGOs. Across 12 countries, 74% were female. 53% of the respondents were aged between 25 to 40. And the results were quite shocking. 91% self-report living under profound stress. And 61% said they felt direct threats to their own lives and the lives of colleagues. And 82% of the females stated events and concerns and consistent overtones of sexual violence as their second greatest threat. These are really large figures. These are not small. And what is an overtone? So indications, basically, overtures. Does that make sense, Sandrine? It doesn't have to necessarily be overt. And these are very large figures, as I say, like 91%, 61%, 82%. We were actually quite shocked. And And when we ask them the same question as your first poll and in the survey, many of them also put themselves in that middle line of building in some types of self-care and seeing some indications of stress. They were able to identify the stress in their colleagues more than they could recognize it in themselves. We really need to be encouraging our teams to get support even before you're seeing any sort of indications. So research would tell us that you should be automatically building in self-care into your life, even if you are not under a huge amount of stress, or even if you put yourself in a category of I'm doing great. You really need to be making sure that it's scheduled into your day. You can see here 90% reported an unsatisfactory level of life satisfaction. More than 90% reported an unsatisfactory level of career satisfaction. I mean, this is really serious. So now I want to focus on all of you. What are the types of things do you see when your colleagues or yourself are not doing well? What types of things? What do you see in your colleagues or yourself when you're not doing well? Bad mood? Yes. Anger and irritability? Yes. Conflicts? Yeah. I mean, conflicts is a real, lack of motivation, tiredness, distracted, analyzing cases good enough. Yeah. So not going for the best, persistent delays, not focused on the work, lack of interest, apathetic. Yes. The conflict stuff and the aggression is disorganized. Yes. The aggression is more obvious and something that always comes up. The not focusing on the work and being disorganized, we see that in colleagues that were super organized before and now they're not. Tired, late for work, yes. I mean, yeah, there's so many. Well, you had anger and aggression, overworking, underworking, passive, lack of sleep, crying and emotional. Increased substance usage, someone put, yes, we have that on here. Negative emails and communication. Have people seen that in the field? Mistakes, eating badly, lack of contact with friends and family, martyr-like behavior, like they're the most important and they're the one that are going to save everything. Lack of interest, limited socialization, increased or too much socialization, self-medicating, high-risk behaviors, limited boundaries, limited self-maintenance. So people that may not be showering regularly, you'll see them have dirty hair and the like. Yeah, people that are sad without perspective of the future. Yeah, that's right. They get depressed, absolutely. And guess what we want to do is we want to break down things into indicators so that we can really see it in ourselves when we really need to get immediate help, but also so that we can see it in others. We do, as I say, we do lose many great professionals because of being burnt out and being getting themselves to a point where they're depressed. No hobbies other than work. So many of you said that you were seeing some signs as listed. There were a couple of people that did the survey prior to this webinar, and they said they weren't actually doing too well at all. And this is not unusual. So don't be worried about that. If you look at all of those indicators we were talking about, and if you go back to the brain development, you are absolutely down in the base of your brain, and what you need to be doing is bringing yourself up to the grey matter in your brain. And how you do that is actually scheduling self-care activities into your day, like guided meditations, like making sure that you do some sort of exercise. during the day, like watching comedies on the TV, for example, whether it be on your computer and you're downloading something, but making yourself laugh because that creates different chemicals in your brain. Making sure you make contact with your friends and family. It's not unusual, and you shouldn't punish yourself for that. This is very normal reactions. Many of you are under profound stress constantly, and you've been living in that profound stress. So it's natural for our brains to take us down to the base. It's also good for us to recognize in others that this is occurring, that their reactions are very normal, but for they need to step away from the computer and maybe not write that angry email, and that we need to encourage in our teams to build in scheduled activities. And this is where self-care plans can come in. I'll get to that very soon, Judith. So where do you sit on the self-care spectrum? Many of you said you were building in a little self-care, but some of you said that you weren't building in self-care at all. So what do you see as self-care? What sort of activities do you see as self-care? Sport, yes. Meditation and yoga, exercise, yes. Books, absolutely. Eating well, yeah. Walks in the park, yeah. Sleeping, yes. Classical music, friendships, yeah. Being alone, yeah. Talking with friends, Star Wars, yeah. Venting sessions with someone, yes. Writing, absolutely. Seeing movies, yes. And when you're really busy, how often do we actually do all of these things? When we're incredibly stressed and busy at work, how do we make sure that we're doing it? Yeah, we're doing it less often, very little, absolutely. So when you have to go to a meeting or you need to get a project done, you schedule it into your diary, right? You have to do the same with self-care. You have to. Because if you're only doing self-care activities once a month, you will very easily go down into your reptilian part of your brain, and then it will be very difficult for you to function at your best and to be healthy. So it's really important that you build in something every single day and bigger activities once a week. So this is a really great quote that I really love, and we use it a lot in humanitarian wellbeing. We've come to believe that caring for ourselves is not self-indulgent. Caring for ourselves is an act of survival. And it's very true. We often, in our particular field of work, we do tend to think that taking that time for ourselves is self-indulgent given everything that we are surrounded by. But it really is about our own survival and our own well-being long-term, as well as the well-being of our beneficiaries. We make much better decisions when we're at the higher end of our brain. What qualities do you see in people who prioritize self-care? So what qualities do you see in people who prioritize self-care? They're calmer, they're patient, yeah, calm, open-minded, relaxed, fun, more energized, good balance, optimistic, strict with their schedule, yeah, so they can draw boundaries. I, in the past, have found that very hard to do. They leave workplace in time, they're compassionate, better organized, good at managing conflicting priorities, absolutely. Yeah. It's really difficult, and when you're not a person that has been doing this for a long time, you really have to actively and consciously build it in. Sense of humor, yes. So Some of the qualities are boundary setting, taking at least one day off from all work. They contact friends and families outside of work regularly. They ensure that they plan activities outside of work. They take leave and go on R&R on time. They schedule self-care into their week. They encourage others to build in self-care. They smile and laugh more. They present themselves better. Oh, what is R&R? R&R is when you're in a hard, what's called a hard or a high-risk duty station, and they have these rules where every 6 weeks you have to leave that duty station for a week. And we find that even in really hard duty stations, not everyone goes on R&R on time. Thanks, Marion. Rest and recuperation is the breakdown, yes. So they're able to listen and react calmly. Oh, okay. So there's a comment here. It's very rare that people with such qualities are good workers. Well, the evidence would suggest that that's not the case. So there is a lot of research, particularly from the business community, not necessarily from the humanitarian field, but certainly from the business community and also through positive psychology professors, where it is very clear that if people build in self-care, they're actually more able to be more efficient and consistent at work. They produce much more work. The results are much better. Individuals, we're talking about individuals who prioritize self-care. So I think when people don't feel able to schedule self-care, they resent when others do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There is a need to educate managers and supervisors on this. Yes, absolutely, there is. But what we've found too is that organisations are following slowly behind. I mean, TDH is one of the organisations that actually is taking this very seriously, and I think there is going to be a number of organisations that will eventually be following in the coming months and year. But if your organisation doesn't do it, you have to make that decision for yourself to do it. Okay, yeah, and there's a strong myth that a good hardcore humanitarian person doesn't need to do self-care. Yes, absolutely. But the reality is that they do. I mean, many of us who have been in this field a long time have seen people in the field who have been going from hard duty station to hard duty station, no break. These are not well people. And in fact, there are there are a lot of locations where they're actually hindering the further development of the beneficiaries rather than being a benefit to them. Okay, so self-care doesn't always come out in a healthy way. Sometimes it's more self-medication, yeah. But ideally, you wouldn't need medication. Ideally, self-care would be activities that you would build in. Yeah, there are some negative attitudes towards setting your boundaries and focusing on yourself in some organisations. Yeah, I mean, the reality is that there are some bosses that think that if you are there 24/7, that you're doing great work, and that's not the case. And yet, I have seen people that really are amazing at self-care. And because they produce such great work, they're able to leave on time. Yes, there is a lot of self-medication, like drinking and maybe some other high risk behaviors which make things worse. Absolutely. Yeah. So what we're talking about, I guess, is positive self-care. So definitely people who prioritize self-care are able to produce more effective and high quality work. Absolutely. So humanitarian wellbeing has a number of tools and resources, but you can also find tools and resources online. If you go onto the Humanitarian Wellbeing website, which is just humanitarianwellbeing.com, you'll find these resources on there. They're very good for assisting in various things, like whether if you've got too many priorities, identifying whether things are urgent or important, things that you might need to let go, balancing wheels, self-care plans, and the like. It's worth looking at these, because if you have team members or even colleagues, even if you're not the manager, and you have colleagues and friends, that you could do all this together and encourage each other to do this sort of stuff. The self-care plan is a really important one, because really what we're talking about is what you like to do to take care of yourself, what brings you pleasure, what you can do on a daily and weekly basis, what you can do on a regular basis, and what you can do in the next 3 to 6 months. And if you do these sorts of plans, if you're a manager, you could print these off and get your team to do it, and encourage them to ensure that they actually see out their self-care plans. If you're not a manager, you could do it for yourself and your friends and your colleagues, and help each other, like as a group, as a community, to encourage each other to do these self-care plans. At a minimum, you should be doing some type of on our website, so on the Humanitarian Wellbeing website, so it's humanitarianwellbeing.com. That question was, where can we find these papers? Also, it's important to, at a minimum, to think about things like meditation or sitting quietly every day for at least 10 minutes. Ideally, it would be morning and evening. Having an evening ritual of some sort for going to sleep, making sure you don't bring work back to your bedroom, for example, and you have a nice space for that. Minimizing the drinking throughout the week, so not on school nights necessarily, so to speak, and doing some sort of exercise every day, even if it's just walking. It doesn't have to be a massive amount of exercise, but doing some type of exercise every day. And if you're not feeling great, watching a comedy of some sort. If you're really, really not feeling great, just dance. Dancing will bring your mood up really, really quickly, surprisingly. Yes, I'm not saying not bring work home, not bring it into your bedroom. So make sure that you have your sacred space of where you sleep somehow, or you separate it somehow. So for example, I used to bring my computer I lived in a very small space when I worked in Darfur. I used to bring my work back, obviously, to the container. But the idea is that all that would be packed up, and then I would start my nighttime ritual before I went to bed, which was go and have a nice warm shower, put nice pajamas on, or however you want to sleep, put on nice music, do a nighttime meditation of some sort, but separate the work from when you're going to sleep, not just turn the computer off or fall asleep while you're doing work. Does that make sense? And then making sure that you do somehow draw your boundaries and make sure you have at least one full day off every week, if at all possible. And where possible, ensure that you're doing these other things that you all talked about before, sport or art activities, or reading your books, or watching your favorite shows, going to the movies, seeing friends, making sure all those activities are built into your everyday. Does that make sense? Yes, you should start tomorrow. Start today. Yes. Yes, well, it's a really good point. What if you're locked in because of security? Absolutely. So, if you're in plastic containers or in tents and things, you can still, at the very least, you can download guided meditations. You can still make sure that you have a nighttime ritual and separate that out. The exercise can be walking around a small compound, and making sure that you create that sort of level of environment for yourself where you separate out the work from your safe space. Yeah, you can listen to music what you like, absolutely. Yes, it is hard to do, Sandrine, and the reason why it's hard to do is because we sometimes do think it's self-indulgent and that there's more important things to do, and also we're not used to doing it, which is why you have to schedule it in. You really have to make the decision that this is really important and it's going to make me more efficient at work. You'll sleep much better, and you'll also be a lot calmer at work if you start the day with a guided meditation before you go into the craziness. You can be anywhere in the world with a guided meditation. You don't necessarily need the internet. You can download those things. Does this make sense? And this is why sometimes putting it in writing, like doing a self-care plan, can be helpful. It's like a commitment that you make with yourself. And if you do have colleagues or friends that are in the field with you, you can all decide to do it together. Especially if you're all living in that limited sort of space, you can come up with creative ways of doing it. And you can also share, funny shows and movies and the like. Don't watch anything serious when you're doing this sort of work. It's if you're already stressed and you go and watch a movie that's really serious and heavy, or a documentary, it's not going to be great for you. Yes, exactly. We need to keep working to change the perceptions of this hardcore humanitarian worker. Um, yeah, it's interesting that quite often the people that are doing a lot of casework and doing a lot of social work or casework or mental health work in the field are usually the least um, are the people that actually probably need the self-care the most and are probably least likely to do it. And that's why we need to set the example. Um, we ask our beneficiaries to do it, and we need to be doing it ourselves. If we do it ourselves, then people outside of our field and in other sectors will also start to do it. Yeah, you're right. So the non-mental health workers also ridicule. It's true, but if they also need it, and certainly if we lead the way and we promote it, and we show them how it's done, you know, they'll see benefits in it too. So I just wanted to let you know what is available from Humanitarian Wellbeing. So if you do have yourself, or you have people that you know that might benefit from our services, do let them know. We do one-to-one sessions with a wellbeing coach. We have psychosocial support as part of that. We have tools and resources. We have group calls. We have webinars like this, team building workshops for organisations and organisational supports. We're on Facebook, so if you are on Facebook, you can like us on Facebook, and through that you can also get updates and some of the latest research and some really great articles that encourage self-care. Also, there's a blog on the website that also has that. And the email address is there, info@humanitarianwellbeing.com, if you're interested in a one-to-one session. I just really want to say thank you to TDH for allowing the time for this. It's fantastic that we've nearly got 50 participants on the line here, and it's absolutely extraordinary that this many people have turned up. I think that says a lot about the organisation, and I really appreciate the time. And if there are any questions, we've got some time for that right now. Yeah.
Natalie, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think there was a question about fight, flight, freeze. Yeah. So the fight, flight, freeze is the 3 Fs, and that's the response that your brain will have. So when you're seeing people in the aggressive sort of mode, they're in the fight mode. Some people will avoid the situation, and some people will literally not do anything. Yeah.
Natalie, we had a question previously on how you can help others get these types of activities started. Could you please address this?
So I mean, one way is to print off things like the self-care plan. You could do a short presentation on the brain, and where people ask them what they see in other people that are not doing so well, and why that would be. If it's one-to-one, it's much easier, but if it's in a group setting, you can use it like in team meetings, for example, raise it, and show them the self-care plan. Also show them some of the survey results, particularly related to the numbers and the high level of people that aren't doing so well, because I think some people that are doing really badly often feel very isolated, and sometimes managers don't realise the long-term impact to the work, so it benefits them if they make sure that their team is being looked after.
Thank you, Natalie. There is one more question. How we can explain our need of self-care to other people around us?
You also allows you to see what
Natalie, sorry, we couldn't hear you. Could you please start answering the question again?
Sorry. So yes, so I wouldn't necessarily say that it's about you personally. I would raise it as a more general conversation around self-care, and I would make sure that that's what you were talking about it in more general terms, and asking them what they do about self-care, and recognizing that there is research out there that says that people perform better at work if they look after themselves. So then it takes away from the personal side and doesn't put you in a position of vulnerability, and allows you to see what other people think in the situation. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much, Natalie. I can see people are asking about where they can get the recording and the slides. So as Judith has written, we will upload the recording of the webinar, all links and slides, to the webinar page on the childhub.org website. So please access the page to download the materials. And I will take the chance to thank Natalie for a wonderful presentation, very motivating. Thank you very much. And could everybody please evaluate the webinar? You can see the poll on your screen now. And I'm just wrapping up. It doesn't mean you have to leave the room. You can still stay and ask your questions or share comments. But I would also like to announce that we're going to have some more very interesting webinars this winter. So please stay in touch with us and check the webinar sections on the childhub.org website. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so Daniel said that other professions think that social workers are not so overstressed, and this is an ongoing problem. Quite often, the value of social workers is not necessarily there, and I think that's a much bigger issue. But you know, obviously, we are overstressed. There's no doubt our workload is huge, particularly when you're doing casework. And the ramifications are also huge. The decisions that you make, what's on your shoulders is large. So yeah, thank you everyone. I really enjoyed tonight, and I look forward to catching up with some of you in other times. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact us at info@humanitarianwellbeing.com, and feel free to download any of the materials on our website. Thank you.